Gathering us in for the second special board meeting of the week for the PGUSD Board of Education on November 20th. And we are going to start with our land acknowledgement. So good evening. As we begin this meeting, it's important to pay respect and acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Costanoan, Ohlone, and Esalen people, and additionally pay respect to elders both past and present. So with that, can I get a roll call vote?
Of course. President Dr. Hazen.
Here.
Clerk McNary.
Here.
Trustee Otmar. Here. Trustee Shamas.
Here.
And Trustee Wax.
Here. And we have a short agenda ahead of us, so we will open up to public comment if anyone has concerns or questions about the agenda. Seeing none online and none in the room. Anybody from the board, a question or concern about the agenda?
I have something. I just wanted to remind whoever is submitting the consents for extracurricular activities out of county that it's 4 weeks. And we're getting one of them, I think, 4 days prior. So just a reminder that those should be coming a little bit earlier. Unless there's some pressing circumstance. I know it was a tournament, but.
That was the exact pricing circumstance. And I think in this case, because it wasn't on the original schedule, right? If they make it to a certain level, they'll only have a few days in advance. But typically we try to, stay in line with that.
I think it was just all but one of them. So okay. I don't know that they're all tournaments, but anyway, just wanted to bring that to the attention.
Thank you for that reminder, Trustee Otmar. Yep.
Any other board comments or discussion? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Also move.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Trustee Otmar and seconded by Clerk McNary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not, it passes 5-0. So I will now identify our closed session topics. And we're not going to be dealing with items A or B on negotiations, but we will have public employee discipline, dismissal, release, leave complaint, Government Code 54957, confidential student matter, and then review of Superintendent 25-26 goals. So is there any public comment on these closed session topics? Again, seeing none, I will go ahead and adjourn us to closed session. Gaveling us back in at 6:34, and I'm going to report out what we discussed on closed session, which is item D, information was received and direction was given. And for item E, information was received and direction was given. So now we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk McNary, would you mind leading us in the pledge? Hey, and now we are on to our consent item, which this is basically no discussion unless a member of the board requests it or someone from the public suggests we deal with it as well, and the board can echo that decision. And we have one item, item A. So is there any public comments on the consent agenda? Not seeing anyone online or anyone in the room. Can we check, Lewis, how many participants are any of those non-district staff? And I only ask because they're just, okay. It's not district staff. Okay. Okay, good. I will keep referring to you one person. Hopefully can be useful. Board, any question, concern about the consent? If not, I will go ahead and make a motion to approve consent items as presented. Could I get a second? A second. Motion made by myself, seconded by Trustee Wax. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Not, it passes 5-0. And now on to action discussion items. We have 2 SLAs. Don't say it, Beth. Side letter agreements for tonight.
Officer, we do bring before you 2 side letters of agreement. Once again, as partnership with CSEA and PGUSD that when there are a significant change that we bring those to the board and we work with CSEA to come to a side letter of agreement to implement those changes. This first item that we're looking at is going to be a half-hour reduction in the workday of the career tech at the adult school. You will see that this is a temporary reduction in the assignment. And what that means is that should the person who currently holds the position ever move on, the position remains an 8-hour position with the district. However, for this temporary time, it's going to get reduced to a 7.5-hour position, which, as you'll see, is going to result in a savings of $5,655 for the current fiscal year. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about this side letter of agreement.
Do we have anyone from the public interested in commenting? If not, I look to the board.
Yeah, I feel like this is odd. Just because I read it and I think, I don't know if you said anything about precedent, but it does seem like what would prevent other employees from wanting to adjust their schedules and get it approved. There was no reason given, so I'm assuming it's a personal reason for this. But I just found it kind of odd because it's for one person and maybe because it's over at the adult school, but it's still through CSEA. I don't know. So precedent is what I'm concerned about.
Mm-hmm. I think to speak to that just a bit, I don't think that this is the first time that people have made adjustments to their schedule in the district. What is different, maybe than has been in the past, is that we're working with CSEA when this occurs and putting together the formal process of a side letter of agreement to get the board to agree to this, and also to memorialize that it's going to remain a 1.0 in the event that this person should move on, or if circumstances should change and the adult school realizes that they need the full 8 hours instead of the 7.5, then we have the ability to go back to that original amount. I think that if there are other schedules that need to be adjusted, I think that you can expect to see maybe more of these agreements coming forward. The adult school does tend to have more than the other sites. And I think that is due to the flexibility of the schedule.
Yes.
And sort of the malleable nature of the adult school, whereas our K through 12s are a little more entrenched in the school day.
I agree with that. Okay, thank you.
Any other board comments?
So just to clarify, this was at the request of the employee, not of the district.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I get, so it says temporary, but is it temporary besides, under any stipulation besides that employee? It's not for like a time frame.
So there's no end date on it. Correct.
And so if the principal does decide that they are needed that extra half hour, what's the process for that?
So then what we would do is get together with the employee and CSEA, let them know of our need, and either the employee would be able to meet that extra half hour. If the employee isn't able to meet that, then it's one of two paths. Either the district would find a temporary employee for a 0.5 of an hour, right? Or the employee may consider that they can't hold that job. Right. Right now, we don't foresee that happening, or we wouldn't be making this change. Yeah.
Okay, well, anyone can make a motion if they would like on this side letter agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the side letter agreement between CSEA and PGUSD regarding a temporary reduction in hours at the PG Adult School for a career technician.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Clerk McNary and seconded by Trustee Otmar. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes 5-0. We have another side letter agreement with.
But the next side letter of agreement has to do with the minimum day that's going to be coming up next week, which is the reason why we're bringing it to the board at this special board meeting. You may recall that in our agreement with PGTA, one of the things that we agreed to was that on the minimum day, the teachers would be released 30 minutes after students dismissal on these minimum days. One of the things that we try to do is be equitable among our employee groups. And so this agreement is also going to allow our classified staff to be able to leave 30 minutes after the student dismissal on the Thanksgiving minimum day. The reason why it's only for one of the days is there are still some details that need to be worked out with some of the other minimum days that don't apply to this one. So we wanted to bring the agreement for the Thanksgiving Day forward first so that we could do it in a timely fashion while we hammer out the details for the winter break, the spring break, and the last day of school. You can expect to see that in an upcoming meeting as well. So for now, we bring forward the minimum day dismissal agreement with the California School Employees Association.
Great. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll go back to the board. Any comments on this? Okay, yeah. Commissioner Moss.
Did we not agree to this already in our last negotiations? I thought we did.
It was part of PGTA.
And
And we were working through some of the details, but couldn't reach agreement when we closed the negotiations with CSEA last year. And the reason being is some of the employees cannot leave school 30 minutes after the student dismissal, like the BA SRP staff, some of the custodial. So what we're doing is we're working with the supervisors to find time to make up for the time that they're not going to be able to take off.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
And so those are
it
the.
seems like we did talk about this, or you briefed us on this with CSE about CSEA.
We did. And some of the updates and summaries that the board received. But when the tentative agreement came forward, this language was not in the tentative agreement because some of the complications that we discovered as we were trying to put the finishing touches on the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Could I get a motion on this item then as presented? I will go ahead and make a motion then that we approve the side letter agreement with CSEA regarding Thanksgiving.
I'll second.
Motion is made by myself, seconded by trustee Shamas. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? If not, it passes 5-0. So we're now on to item C, the board governance training and self-evaluation session. So I think we're going to take our mics and head to the tables. Okay, thanks so much. I will come back to gavel out at the end.
My memory can be so.
Oh, mine too. It's
I'm like, maybe I was eating after that 10 minutes.
I just figure if I say it with you, the calories don't count for me.
Right.
And we will start with a little, your favorite part of it, right? That little icebreaker at the beginning. So I've got a little one to follow up on what we've done, up until this point as well. But this is really what we're looking at, a little team builder for 10 minutes. We're going to take a moment to just review our norms again, right at the start from our handbook. Tonight we'll be talking about chapters 3 and 4. So I've kind of got some prompts for us that'll lead through that discussion. Definitely the self-evaluation process. So we have a tool. I've got hard copies for us this evening as well. And I thought we could just take the time, to review that and just gather some input and any additions or changes we want to make to that prior to our reviewing that at our next governance session. I had 3 topics that were requested. So those are listed as far as just some discussion items. So we've got that on a slide. How not to be a terrible board member activity. And I think just looking at the list of everything, we'll see how much time we have. I think we'll just gauge ourselves. But I think, the most important piece of the core governance and that self-evaluation tool, for tonight. And then we'll gather and take some time at the end for topics for next session. Sound good? Okay. All righty, here we go. Our energy bus reflection. So you will recall, and I need to get. So we've done 2 of these already since. No. You do not need to read this one. It was a present. I like that. So remember, we're reading it as a leadership team. We're also reading it at the district office. And so it's really been neat because we make activities, we've broken it up into chapters and we've done a lot of fun things. So I kind of see how effective those activities are. And then it's nice. I can pick one of them that we do as a board. So here we are. Squeaking.
Seriously? No, there's like a squeak. Maybe
I think it's the fan.
These speakers have a tiny problem.
Oh, it's weird. So that we're hearing it though for the
It sounds
first
like a-
time. The whistle.
Okay.
Who
knows? My ears ring. Oh, is that what it is?
So because we're sitting here in a different location, but even so, we haven't heard it before, right? We've been here. Okay, so really what I did with our leadership team this week, it's been a heavy month with a lot. I think, I opened up our leadership team meeting by just looking around the room and thinking, especially looking at our principals of, just some of the heavy load and the heavy lifting they've been having to do, in the last couple of weeks. And you could feel it. It was heavy in the room. And I just know my cabinet right now, I mean, they are, they've got a lot on their plates, as we talk about, self-care, that kind of thing. So we really I wanted to allow time, in the meeting to just allow for some reflection. We talk so much through the energy bus about the energy that we're showing up with. We're always try to, keep that as positive as possible. But sometimes when you're carrying a lot, there's heavy emotional, baggage that comes along with that, right? And I think we've got to be able to take the time to just stop and reflect. So that's really where this, opening, piece comes in. It's number one that we get to choose the energy we bring, right? I think that's the important thing. We're the driver of our bus, but sometimes it can be a little bit more challenging, right? Sometimes there's some road bumps in the road as we're driving that bus that, may require us to, either slow down or, take a different path. You may recall the energy bus talks a lot about those energy vampires, right? And so they, energy vampires, they're, we want to be sure we're not allowing them to attach themselves to our bus, right? And so as we're going, just being aware and, self-reflecting on that. So that's the first one. And then another book that I'm reading right now, Crucial Conversations, really is, I saw such a close link in the reading we did most recently in the energy bus with something that I've read in that book, that when, stakes are high, when emotions are running, maybe a little bit tenser, when opinions maybe differ, all right, and we've got to have some awkward and hard conversations, it's how we approach and how we have that conversation in the moment matters more than ever. So just combining those two, thinking about, okay, the energy that we show up, and what I'm going to ask all of us today is to even just focus on today, on all this week, right? But, it can be as simple as today, the energy that you brought in, when you woke up this morning, right? Or whatever, think about your day, whatever, you had on your schedule for the day. Maybe it was even, midday, you had a meeting or, picking up an interaction with your kiddos, or, tonight, right? Even the energy you've brought in, to the room when you came in here for the beginning of the board meeting. And even the energy you're carrying now, right? Has that changed? Has that shifted? So really, that's what I want you to really just think about as we figure out and we work through the first prompt. So thinking that through, the energy, knowing there's a lot that you're all carrying right now. What is that energy that you've been showing up with lately? Where in your work have you been maybe stretched thin, rushed, or pulled in many directions? And how is that showing up in your interactions? Just to think on that, I'm going to go ahead and pass out a little index card for all of you to jot those down. And this again, it's just for you. I'm also going to hand out the index cards you wrote before. And the idea is going to be, we have paper clips for you to go ahead and, attach this to your last prompt before. But for now, just go ahead and think that through, jot down your reflections. While you're doing that, I'm going to hand out cards. I'll move on to the second part of it because it's related. You'll have some time to finish up. But as you're reflecting on where you are, maybe think of one strategy that you use. Maybe you are using it or you need to be using it more. Stay grounded when things feel heavy or urgent. And what helps you respond rather than react to some of those more, high stake matters. Go ahead and reflect on that. And that's what we'll be sharing out in our pairs in a bit. Okay. More time. Sorry, I realized that actually Sarah had already paper clipped an extra index card. If you also, of course she did, right? So just, we'll have 3 now. She's good. Oh, good. The date, it
The breakfast
was.
stuff. Wasn't it the
First governance session,
Oh.
which was, I think, I know we did one on September 18th, but we did one before that as well. So yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good to kind of have the dates on there. I like that for your reflection. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and pair up. So do you want to pick the people you paired with before? Or do you want different partners? What do you want to do? Okay, all righty, just go ahead with your, all right, okay, I'm gonna cover through, okay, you go, and I think that's how we were paired, right, the two of you, and then I'll pair up with Elliot, and I'm gonna come on over your way, and Bob, you're gonna share, yes, exactly, yep.
Let's pair and share. Hmm.
That was it.
Like, I think in the past year-ish, I've been getting better at actual gratitude. And so realizing things are out of my control sometimes, or putting them into perspective is helpful. And then also helping me respond is the realization that there are multiple ways to achieve things that will get the same results. And I don't have to be tied to the process or my way. I think I'm getting better at that. I hope. I think.
So putting your ego over here a little bit. Okay, I put. Well, my strategy is I think about what I need to support my preparations, like whatever I dealt with in the past that pertains to this situation.
Mhm.
So the one thing I was. Okay, we were told to prepare to do this for this meeting. Then when you go and you find out in the email, like, oh, this is gonna, we're gonna have to close session. Like it's a whole different topic, you know, like, okay, so then that, you know, how do I get that in order in my head
Mhm, mhm,
to feel prepared?
mhm.
So that's what I'm doing.
So do you like run through the meeting in your head, basically?
Well, I mean, okay, so we saw that whole discussion.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I'm thinking, okay, what? Well, no, yeah, closer. You know, so like one of the things I did was like, but even in America, you know, whatever, but like. Ultimately. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying. It's
Breath in, hold it, and go back out.
Yeah. I do like.
So for mine, it's like trying to.
You know, when-
I put down everything that I drink. Outside, that's never.
That's just that how some. On my computer right now, so I share.
And then.
Like the thing with like the.
What helps me respond rather than react is like just all the training.
I only draw. I mean, I got notes about the.
Brought it.
It's making sure. that-
But anyway, so that's for me.
Okay.
With empathy and then one thing trying to.
Like,
I got
so I'm sitting.
Like the thought of it, and just say it and it just.
Tire, like,
From up
four,
here, like.
one.
Was that like something I needed to say?
Focus on
Yeah,
that.
one side.
Yeah, because the thought of like, okay, is it about me? Is it?
Yeah,
Is it my thing?
Yeah, so anyway, I think.
Yeah. Which is so hard. And Tuesday morning.
You know, remind. I know. It is. Now, but I was like the first.
How do you?
I feel like that's-
Do you?
Right. Even if it's all. And I'm like, no matter what, you know, like. This one.
And I also, I'm a.
No, Yeah. Oh, my God.
It's the hospital. Goes one direction.
That's that.
That is
That
a-
is a-
They look the other direction, like, beautiful. It's like a good reminder. Last time it was. Yeah. And see
Who's
now
the
it's
most
charged. I always, I do see that.
Yeah.
Do they have?
All night. Bring us back. You have to all see Elliot's pictures of his road trip. Because it's just calming. It's beautiful. He's gonna send it to Lewis. Mhm. All right. So we had a chance to kind of reflect with our partners, and do you want to go ahead and just, share out briefly some ahas and maybe some good strategies that you learned from your partners?
Okay. I mean, unfortunately, it's either I copied Linda's answers or she copied mine because we had pretty much
Some of that.
word for word about that, but just, focusing on when you're in that position to feel grounded is the centering, like remember where you are. Breathing came up for both of us and both of our parts as well. Relying on the strength of others is one thing Linda shared, I think is safe to say. And then, if you need to take some time to not react right away, is take the time to think about the decision before whatever it is, before it has to be made.
I'll summarize. Thank you.
I'll go next. One strategy, Laura shared 3 strategies, which I feel like is a strategy in itself, having a toolkit of multiple things. But one thing she shared is movement and specifically going for walks really helps. So.
And then Jen said kind of, it was the
Yeah.
same thing about getting out and walking, also doing like breathing exercises,
Yeah.
like breathing through things.
Well, I think what Elliot kind of shared mine for me, like he kind of summarized it for both of us, and he did an excellent job. So yeah,
So you agree?
I agree.
So Mike was saying that he has been feeling more grateful
Oh.
and that that's kind of helped him be more of a centered, I think. You didn't say centered, but I don't know. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is, yes. Actual gratitude and that and things that you do have control of. I guess this leads into my second thing that I was saying, and I'll transition there, was I've been less fixed on doing something like my way. Like I realized that the same goals and outcomes can happen in a variety of manners. So it's the shared goal. It's fine with me. And then Trustee Schmalz was saying that she
Get that.
I got it, I understood it.
I'll say.
Our own conversation.
That she basically, she gave me a free parenting lesson too, about to not respond to how something is going. Actually, go.
Well, okay, so up there you have what helps me respond rather than react. And I was just saying that that was one of the things that in my communication classes, we always talked about what's the difference. And then I was saying that, so when you're reacting, you're either in your head or you're in your gut. And so where you want to be is in your heart, where you're not taking it personal. And then Mike was saying, well, what about if you're trying to negotiate a settlement between two people? I said, like kids, and he goes, yes.
Purely hypothetical.
And I said, yeah, okay, well, what I was taught was, you always deal with the loudest one first, because they're the ones that are most frustrated, most needy right then. Even if they're the most guilty, you still work with that person first and hear them and then turn to the other one, because usually the one that's not as charged will be able to wait until you address that other one. So it's just
Very good. The only one that you didn't, mention was really, I think you used, Elliot used the example of the road trip recently where, you went and nothing was planned or scheduled, right? You just kind of no hotels or, so sometimes doing something out of your comfort zone, right? And maybe going along with, it doesn't always have to be your way. I see connection there from both of you. And then you also mentioned, just always looking for the bright spots as well. Your whole journaling, practice is really important. Yeah. I love that. Well, I think, the closing message for this, and I've kind of put on the next slide is, in your lives right now, you are carrying a lot. And I think that next bullet, being human, doesn't disqualify you from being excellent leaders. And I think fill in the blank there, right? Whether it's an excellent, an effective parent, an effective friend, just invites awareness. And I think that's all practice of being self-reflective and really you're building that awareness of where you are, where your energy is, how you're showing up, how you're responding, with all reacting, right? Just take control, back of that energy again. It's not about perfection, it's about intention, right? Choosing our energy, slowing down when possible, and remembering that there's the human on the other side of that conversation, right? And how we show up for that matters. And we won't share it out, but just, as you're going through this, I hope you can, really commit, something that you've taken away from today that you're going to take into the next week with you, and maybe into the holidays. Be great. All right, well, thank you all. I'll collect these at the end, just kind of leave them, they will keep them nice and safely in our energy bus envelope, and just really appreciate you all, continuing to participate in that. All right, we're going to go ahead and just review our norms. And Lewis, would you mind just clicking on the handbook page? And we have 6 of them again, so we'll each have a turn to read one. And I'll go out of order this time, just because normally I start, and then that means we're all reading the same one. So do you want to start with us today, Laura? Let me go ahead and hold on. I will just get them. Page 6, right? Thank you. Okay. And they're on page 6, Elliot, when you do get it open. Thank you. Page 6, yeah. And the first one is accountability. Yeah.
Accountability. We take collective responsibility for the performance and success of our governance team. Each trustee contributes to maintaining trust, transparency, and the integrity of board operations while staying focused on what's best for students.
Number 2, competence and judiciousness. We commit to acting as informed, thoughtful, and ethical stewards of public education. We honor our roles, avoid micromanagement, and collaborate constructively. Through professional development, preparation, and respectful conduct, we model effective leadership and focus on the district's long-term vision.
Ethics and integrity. We uphold the highest standards of ethical conduct, fairness, and transparency. We adhere to the Brown Act and only discuss issues in adherence with the Brown Act. We do not engage in serial or multi-board member conversations outside of board meetings. We avoid conflicts of interest, honor confidentiality, and do not use our positions for personal gain. Trust is maintained through honesty, discretion, and a shared commitment to integrity in all interactions.
Solidarity. We value our collective impact over individual interests and personal opinions. Personal disagreements are addressed privately and respectfully. We maintain a united front, engage in thoughtful deliberation, and avoid personal attacks, ensuring our decisions are grounded in student-centered governance.
How the board communicates. We prioritize open, honest, and respectful communication. Differences of opinion are welcomed and discussed civilly. Once decisions are made, we speak with one voice to foster public trust and avoid undermining the work or reputation of the board or superintendent.
I'll do the last one. Support, respect, and consideration. We treat one another as equal partners in leadership, showing courtesy, empathy, and appreciation for each other's contributions. We avoid gossip or personal complaints, support the superintendent's role, and respect each other's time, motivation, and perspectives. Thank you all for joining me. And I continue to think how important it is we just remain, keep revisiting those at the beginning of each meeting and keep our awareness with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and distribute. We're going to go on to our coverage of our, the next 2 chapters, but we had great discussions at our last session. We think back to September. And like I did the time before, I've just gone ahead and, I took notes while we were having those discussions. And I really just want to, take a moment to just share this with you, get to take this, with you. But there were just really some great takeaways, some great ahas that came out of that. So, looking to, chapter 1, remember that was the governance mindset. Some of the pointers that each of you brought forward that really stood out in the notes that we took was just, making sure that we're, staying mindful of what the role is of our one-on-one meetings, that we continue to, to show clarity, in what the purpose of those is. One thing that you all pointed out in that was making sure that, that's not a moment for one-on-ones. It's not direction, it's conversations that we have, and making sure that from those, we get that information is then shared, with all trustees. An example from that was, consent item discussion. We, kind of took the time to review Learning environment for trustees was a big one. Really, I highlighted their mistakes are learning opportunities, right? We talked a lot about that. And I think you were really all just, really open with one another as well and kind of sharing some examples. Using the handbook and managing ego, that was kind of, a big part of our discussion, making sure we have this great handbook, that we're using it to reference and refer to. Future challenges and differing worldviews. I think the SRO, topic came up there as far as, one example of, where something we'd recently come out of, where, there may have been differing opinions, but how did we move forward as a board, right? And, in order to, manage that. Modeling for students, you were all very clear on that's, an important component. Improving discourse and preparedness. And then, we talked a lot about the guidelines, on page 21. And there was a lot of discussion there. I used the example, you don't have the votes. We're not, bringing that up again. Just an example. I think that was part of the conversation we had that was something that was incorporated in chapter 1, but, just used as a means of how, just when we get to a point where, there's maybe not an interest across the board, right, for a topic to be brought back again, sometimes it is a matter of kind of just having to come out and state that. And sometimes that's the board president's, role. So we had that discussion. And then moral imperative, just being aligned, right, in what that is and what it stands for. Chapter 2, we talked a lot about, that was all about strengthening governance and infrastructure, system stability through transitions, really kind of making sure that as we bring in, new board members and the nature and the makeup of the board changes, right? That's why it's so important that we, have those systems in place. Trust, transparency, and accountability. We talked a lot about, those growth opportunities of one another and the trust, right, with all of you in order to bring things up when we need to have hard conversations. Superintendent's role in infrastructure when it comes to board governance. There was a lot of talk about that, being accessible and transparent. Board self-evaluation was a big part of, of that second chapter. And so it's exciting, the fact that we're going to be, starting that process tonight. There was that whole, concept, if you recall, of, the helicopter fire metaphor, right? And we, used recent examples of that. And then really we came to, a summary there of, tools to strengthen governance, and, 4, items were listed there. And commitment to ongoing improvement was really kind of another, commitment that we made. I just share that with you. That's really from the notes directly. I take them directly into the slides, so we have them, but you've got this. And I think that's just important to start with. That helps give us the grounding before we move into our next 2 chapters. All right. So chapter 3 and chapter 4. Again, that's that same quote that I keep bringing to, right? Effective guidance it isn't about control, but coherence, collaboration, and the courage, right, to lead for every student. Okay, so, the title of chapter 3, the governance, we're really looking at the governance triangle. So a lot of talk, right, about that whole, who makes up the governance team, right? And the triangle, we often talk about ourselves, it's the 5 trustees in our instance, with me as the superintendent. But really what is brought up a lot in this chapter is the role that cabinet members, play as well. And I think that's, came up, a little in our last discussion, but, just that ability maybe in a future, governance session for us to really have our cabinet members join, and for us to, maybe do some, activities that, could bring them into those discussions. But yeah, I think that's the triangle itself, and I think what this chapter really, speaks a lot to is about clarity on what the roles are of each individual, who decides what and how decisions move through the system. And that's what sort of stood out to me a lot in this chapter, of the fact that, it's all about the systems we have and the clarity of roles, right? And that's a lot where the handbook comes in. Mindset, having that governance mindset in action, it becomes real through the habits, protocols, communication patterns, and expectations, right? So even though we, can have everything in our handbook, it's really about us as a governance team to be sure that we're following through on, what we have identified as important and what we've identified as what our protocols are. Shared language, shared purpose, right? Predictable decision pathways. I tied it in a little here to, culture of we, when we're looking at, our performing systems operating with alignment rather than uniformity. That stood out to me as I was doing the reading through that chapter. Trust, clarity, and consistency, reduces confusion, conflict, and mixed messages. There's a lot of talk about the ability for us to, have it all, spelled out, but then, how we're putting that into practice and how we're building trust with one another. And then I just, the key point from there, clarity about roles, goals, and decision-making pathways is the glue that holds the governance system together. That's just sort of a summary that I've put together for us. I think through the prompts, this will be your opportunity to share a little of what you pulled out and what stood out to you in your readings. But if you're good with it, I thought we could maybe just start with role clarity and decision making, to really for us to think about in through what you've read. Where do you think we've got strong clarity between the board, superintendent, and cabinet roles? And, do you see any overlap, gaps, or drifting into each other's lanes? Are there times when that happens? And I'll come up first to say yes, I think definitely. But, this is your chance, all of you, to weigh in. Take notes as we talk as well.
One of the things I'll say two things if it's okay, quickly, just to kick us off. And, one being that it's one of the difficulties of, again, being a small district is that there are times where these roles get more blurred than if we really did have true separation in tasks, if that makes sense. And I think that's okay, but I think that's kind of it's not okay. It would be ideal if that weren't the case, but given that that is the case, it's figuring out how we delineate when someone is acting in which role, if that makes sense. I mean, I'll bring up somebody who isn't here, but it's a great example, but one person who was in here and then one about myself even, but Josh Dorn, our CBO, is lacrosse coach as well as also our assistant superintendent and our CBO. And there are definitely times, I mean, luckily I don't have full belief that he's done everything and, above board, but there's times where those roles have different requirements and responsibilities. And so I think that's just, again, the difficulty of the small district. And I wouldn't want him not to be the lacrosse coach. The other one I'll just add, and this is one I wish the book would have dealt with a bit more, but I understand why it didn't. I find on a almost daily, not daily, at least weekly basis though, is the difference between being a board member and a parent or grandparent. That is still where these overlap, gaps, and drifts happen more than I would like. And what I would say is I think it's hard to achieve. It's hard to balance the roles of a board member with advocating for your student or students, your individual students, because there is always that concern of impropriety that if I raise a concern about one of my children, I'm asking for a fix as board president and I deserve better. And that's not ever my intent, but there's always that unspoken potential. So I think that's one I would love, core governance 3.8 maybe to discuss a little bit about is that there are those inherent conflicts of interest, I'll say, that aren't wrong, but that's why a lot of us are on the board is because we do care about children and our children. Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a soliloquy. I apologize.
That actually came up for me when I was reading about the crossover between being a parent and a board member. And it's one thing to say, I'm speaking as a parent right now, because you have to say that. But at the same time, I'm still the face that's sitting up at the dais, and it's hard for somebody to completely disconnect that. And, it can go one of two ways. There can be excessive pushback because you're a board member, or there could be someone that's feeling intimidated somehow or feeling like, oh, I don't want to. So it's something that I didn't expect when I got onto the board, and it's something that I still have a hard time getting used to. No matter how many times you say, or just being at a school, just what, a parent at the school, not with a name tag or, having a volunteer sticker on. It's just an interesting, but I picked, that was what kind of came out for me too.
I'll say.
I underlined a couple of things that I thought were so true. just of my past experience, and one was that the partnership with the superintendent and the board is a fragile bond. It says that can be easily broken if not conscientiously and continuously maintained. And I just think that's so true. And even what you guys are just talking about, just a dilemma of being a parent and a board member. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to always be maybe somehow able to talk about it, either with us or with the superintendent, so that you do kind of monitor yourself and give yourself permission to be the parent, of course. And it is kind of interesting. They don't really seem to address that in here. But that was one that, that I've seen that happen where, and it kind of goes into the next chapter about onboarding, because that's when it really can happen. You get a new board member and there's nothing in place, or an existing board doesn't really do anything special to bring the new person into the group, and weird things happen. Just in the past, I've seen this. Okay, but it's true. Like, I mean, surprisingly, like, people are very sensitive to being accepted in a group, and so just one wrong word or feeling left out of something. Like, there was one thing in here, they were highlighting this other district, and it said here that the superintendent meets with 2 board members at a time. And I thought to myself, I don't really like that. Because of that, I like she's meeting with us one-on-one, and I think that's a very appropriate way to make sure that everyone is feeling like, hey, I've got my time with the superintendent and it's shared, and I'm not feeling like the superintendent is favoring somebody else or is hearing somebody else more than me. So I think those are just very like it says, fragile little things that you don't realize sometimes how it starts to break apart your bond.
The one thing I'll say, I mean, I could see in a less well-functioning board, having 2 board members at a meeting could help prevent the one board member from being like, hey, you need to do this for my kid, or you need to, because it provides a little bit of oversight. But I agree, in a situation where you have a well-functioning board, it's better to do the one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, when the board president and the clerk are meeting, that's I don't think that's a purpose for the agenda setting, and it's not the same. But it was just pointed out here that this was a system they used, and I was just wondering, like, I wonder how that 2 and 2, if it's a 5-member board, how does that work? Like, because people, they take notice of that. Some people maybe not, maybe they don't care, but you just never know. And so those are things that I think are always important to bring up. And I think that us doing these kinds of board check-ins is really important for that.
I have one more just quick to add. Sorry, I'm jumping over a little bit here, but another one, again, this is a small district issue, but we have people in cabinet roles that have filled other roles. And so where that becomes difficult is if there's a question about Forest Grove principal decisions made in the 90s, we might want to go to Chief Rogaman because he was, he has that knowledge. So that's another one of these things that becomes difficult when you have people that have served in multiple roles throughout the district. You have pockets of information that sometimes is not a bad thing. I think it's good, but it just makes it so that it's easier to pull people out of their roles, to drift into the lanes because of that knowledge.
And I think to add to that as well, without having systems in place, we're reliant on individuals. So having the systems that do provide strong clarity of like, this is your role now, this is your lane, you know, you don't need to drift over there because we've created an HR system now where like somebody else doesn't have to monitor it, really is valuable. So we can stay in our lanes instead of like kind of naturally drift over because we see a gap or because, you know, something maybe needs to be addressed. On the parent front, I hear you too, and I guess for me, it gets tricky because sometimes it's like, am I in the parent lane in advocating or am I in the board member lane in advocating? And for me, oftentimes it feels like yes, both.
Yeah, right.
And that an issue that comes up with what regard to like my personal life is affecting my family, but oftentimes that's like the starting point of the issue. And there are other students and other families that have or are experiencing similar circumstances. So I think sometimes it starts with like your child or seeing something from your own personal experience in your bubble, but then it's kind of taking the time to gather information and data and see if this is something that is a bit more broad, because it is worth looking into. Like if something comes up with regard to your child's in a class of 30, perhaps there are other students, figuring out like when you should go to the principal or when I should come bring it to Linda. I kind of, you know, trust that you'll say, hey, Jen, this is a Mr. Roach question regarding your student, you know, have you emailed him first? And I feel like you do that if you're not sure, you know, where we're coming at it from. And that I really want as a board member just to say like, Jen, it sounds like a parent hat is being put on and, you know, or just to guide me in a different direction. But it's so tricky.
I think the messiness comes in when there is, you know, I think everything that's brought forward is a legitimate
Yeah.
concern to want to, you know, look at it, you know, more holistically. But I think that's where, yeah, going back to what our protocols are. And, you know, I think if it is something the side is with your child specifically that you know about now, you know, I think you all, and I appreciate the fact that you all struggle with it a little and you think it through a lot, because you do come to me first before you're going to go to the principal, you know, to kind of have that conversation. I think our being able to have that conversation, you know, thank you, you know, for, you know, wanting to be open and trusting in that. And sometimes it takes me to have to say to you, no, this is absolutely you are wearing your parent hat in this role, and you state that, you know, emphatically when you hold that meeting. But, you know, I think that I try to empower all of you, you know, in that role. And you're right. I mean, you said it, Laura, as much as you say it, I'm here as a parent right now. Everyone, all they can see when they're meeting.
You really know who we are.
Yeah.
It's like you can't help it.
Remember, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's something we've all got to navigate. And yeah, it is going to get messy, and there is no clear. You know, I used to have many years ago, a superintendent would tell us, "Oh, there's a picket fence, you know, between the boards here and the administration and the superintendents here, right?" And it sounds so simple and easy. I remember hearing talk about, yeah, that makes so much sense, right? Until, you know, its relationships are messy. You said it, Beth, you know, it's this beautiful bond that we're having to build and nurture, right? With you as a board, with me as the superintendent. And, you know, it gets messy, as all relationships do, and how we trust each other and are committed to having open conversations when the difficult things come up is everything, and how we're able to, you know, work through it, right? And I think you're calling on me to, you know, just be more direct in my, you know, feedback, you know, to each of you, I think is necessary in that, right? You know, that's my role to, you know, be able to give that to you with kindness and firmness, right? But, you know, I know that when you're coming to me, you need to hear that from me, right? And yeah.
One addition I'll just say on that is, you know, we do have this no surprises rule.
Yeah.
So I do think there is some value, even if we are wearing the parent hat, for us to let you know, because that way it's, you know, if I'm going to go and be like, you know, I won't even give some examples, but something really bad happened to my student. As a board member, I think it is important for us to let you know this is something we're raising through the school, because I think that's something that hopefully you can at least be aware of, but also do that judicial balance of they're going as a parent, but now I know as a superintendent.
Right. And that also allows me, I think, to give support to our staff at the site if it is the principal, right? Because I think that can be, anxiety inducing, right? How am I going to handle this, right? So, I agree with that, Elliot. I think the fact that you all do that, there's a trust there and no surprises. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think part of what we're maybe just agreeing to is that, I think that's what the chapter's telling us, that it isn't as clear cut, right, as it needs to be. And how we deal with it and navigate it when there is a bit of blurring, right, is so important. Yeah. And I appreciate you all, that willingness to, just kind of mess through it a little bit sometimes. Yeah. Okay. Well, coherence is a leadership practice. I think that question, how well do our policies, goals, and messaging align across the governance triangle, and mixed messages might we unintentionally send to staff, families, or the community? Therefore.
I forget exactly which part of the chapter I started like thinking in my head about this. So maybe it's the third part, but and this is a kind of a tangent, as I'm prone to do. But I think like it would be helpful in so many arenas, like if we talk about failures more often, or like we talk about, we highlight the good things happening in the district at each meeting. But I also think it's important to kind of make note of things that didn't go right or were falling short, because I think I've noticed this in past and now, like sort of as a trustee, like you want to like cover yourself because you're scared of failing, because failure is thought of as so bad. And really, if you try something, there's a chance that you're going to fail. And I think for students, especially, like we have to accustom them to failing and that it's okay. And same with teachers, trustees, everyone, as long as your heart, as your goal are proper, for lack of a better word. Because I think failure is too detrimental, or is seen as too much of a bad thing when it's really just an attempt that didn't quite hit the mark, I guess.
Well, and following on that, failure is how you learn most of the time too, right?
Right.
And wearing my parent hat, I often use the quote, like, you're going to make mistakes. It's whether you get up and what you do to respond to them. That's what matters. Because if you lay on the ground throwing a tantrum or fit because you made the mistake, you're not learning from it. You're not improving yourself. So, I mean, I think it's a delicate balance because, do we want to be like, superintendent report, here are the 3 things we did well, and here are the 3 things we did horribly at, right? No, but I think once we start getting this, you would like that, I know. Yeah, I know.
We said for saying, and here's where we have space to improve,
Yes.
because this happened, and
Yes.
if we can reflect on it, and here's where we can go, or whatever,
I
but
think there's a balance there.
failure is
Yes.
essential. It's an essential piece of life. I mean, not anybody that's sitting at this table everyone here has failed at some point or something, or some moment where you feel like, well, there it went. But I mean, it's part of what makes us resilient and human and relatable and all those things. So yeah, I agree with not painting everything like flowers and roses, because there may come a point where it seems insincere, where it's just sort of, we're just powdering everything to make it look pretty. And then, it's the apple thing I was telling you
Yeah.
about. There's a picture, whatever, it's like that social media picture of this shiny, beautiful apple. Well, there's a mirror behind it, and its back half of it's rotten. And by no means am I saying that that's what's happening, but I just mean to present always something pretty isn't real. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also like bringing it back to kids sort of too, or spouse, whatever. Like you're coming at it with love, I guess. So like your love is unwavering. It's like just being candid with the situation, Um,
Well, on that you've raised a really good piece. I think what I'll do in our notes for next time, right, is maybe we actually focus on a section of identifying, 3 or 4 things, right, that we, do feel we need to actually focus on it and get better at. If there's anything now we want to put in the notes, that we can think of, or do we want some think time on that between now and our next session?
I mean, honestly, I'd like to hear it more from teachers.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
And both about us, things in their classes, whatever, because, that's like the most direct path. Wow. Also being, not micromanaging.
Right. Understood. Well, look,
Speaking of mixed messages, we might unintentionally send.
I really think, our self-evaluation tool, right? This is an opportunity, for us as a governance team to really be honest, when we're going through these. We're not doing it tonight. Tonight we're really just going to kind of look at the questions. But as we do, as Lou is going to be walking us through this, right? This is an opportunity for us to really be, upfront about what are the areas we think we're doing well at, and what do we need to do better at, right? But you're also bringing up a good point, Mike. Can we get more input from our community as well? And and the staff.
But I do think that gets into the mixed message. I said it a little facetiously, but especially I'll say in the role of board president, when you're responding to emails, on these things, that's a great example of where sometimes you can, because what I would say is I would like to hear about some of the failures, but I would like to hear about them with the potential for the growth, if that makes sense. Because I don't want to get us into a district where we're like, well, these are the 17 things wrong with the district, and I don't have any ideas for any of them. Like, it's more like, here are things that are going, poorly, and here, or that, I would like to see go better. Those are the kind of things I think would be helpful, so that we're dealing with not just the failure part, but the follow-up. And that's something, again, responding to these emails can be difficult, because it's like, there are many people in the community that do feel like we've made a lot of mistakes, whether it's TK, whether it's our budgeting process, whether it's whatever. And it's, how do you respond from a place of understanding, which, again, everybody has feelings. My kids have feelings. I have feelings. So it's important to recognize that people have strong feelings about a number of these things. But how do we say it's important, but it's part of the landscape, not the only landscape, if that makes sense? That's again, one of those balances where I think sometimes it's easy for a reactive board to focus on every issue that arises. So it seems like that's the main goal of our district at the time. Does that make sense? I went a little rambly again. Yeah.
What's that? I fell asleep.
Seriously, I'm gonna start throwing pens at that.
Honest and candid.
Well, I was gonna say, actually, this last email you responded to, I think you did a pretty good job of somewhat admitting that we may be not perfect there, and so I think that's one way that you're being honest, but without, making it a crisis, or, saying, oh, we don't know what to do, or something like that, So I give you props for that, because I liked how you phrased that, because you were more honest about,
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, an acknowledgement, like, hey, yeah, it's like these, this happens and we're dealing with it, we don't have the perfect answer yet. Like that.
Which feels honest, and that's how we keep the trust going, is if we don't have answers, we can say we don't have answers, or it's a work in progress, or thank you for bringing it to our attention and we'll look into it. But as long as we're honest about, the truth of the matter, like, that's the way to keep the trust going. And it so quickly can disappear when an incident happens. And I'm just thinking of past things where we didn't have Linda, after the shoe game, to send out a message to say, like, here's what we're going to do moving forward. We acknowledge these circumstances happened, and it's left to the community to kind of stir their own pot. And instead of that, we've got you sending a clear message and taking actionable steps moving forward, so that people can have something to work with. Where I feel like sending no message used to just be like, I mean, does the board care? Does the district care? Is this important? You know, the community would clearly think.
Just thanks for your input.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like,
That's what it used to go out.
right,
Thanks for
something
your input.
actionable, you know?
Received.
Received,
Received.
yeah.
Information received, direction will be given.
Yeah. Yeah, this message just made me feel so much more hopeful, like, oh, somebody gets it and they're taking time to think about how it could be different moving forward instead of just like, yeah, acknowledged and received and done. So I think in this day and age, it's really hard not to send mixed messages. It's just how we respond if and when it happens, and being willing to acknowledge it as well. Like, oh, we had bad information or the circumstances changed.
And I'll just say the last part of that is communication is the key. That's what it's communication and trust, but communication is the key. Because again, I didn't this time. I apologize, Linda, but I usually will send a lot of my draft emails to you before too. I'll be like, is this in line? You know, is this something that do I have an issue where I'm saying, yes, we're working on this and we're actually not, you know? And so I think that's the also react and response type thing, which has worked well, although I am taking up your time to review that as well.
Gives you that moment to pause and decide, like, and what I'm learning more and more from you is anytime you can practice your patience, it's usually going to end up with a better result than kind of your initial reaction. So kudos to you for taking all that time and energy to respond to every single one for us as well.
Really have. I mean, I love that you're hearing it from, you know, the rest of the board, but, you know, it's been a lot you've had to respond to on behalf of it in your role as president this year. You've done it well. Yeah.
Thank you. But I think we all do this to a degree, which is why it's valuable to forward around. But I think it is important when we get those letters. Again, part of what makes us good board members is to try to put ourselves in those shoes. Like, even if we disagree, like if someone sends a message that says something, it's just like putting ourselves in those shoes and feeling what they're feeling so that we can, again, recognize that, justify it, and be honest about what we could do. Because there's definitely been times where someone would be like, you know, and we need to make sure that we have 13 classes instead of 8. Like, that's a great idea, but unless you invent the time machine, that's not something we'll be able to do, right? I mean, for example, 13 classes in a day. Thank you all for those comments. I'll just say.
Watching the time, you know, I had one more area for chapter 3. Do we feel like there's anything more we want to say for chapter 3? Or do we want to move on to the next chapter?
I'll just quickly say just the systems again. This is the part, like the things that we've done to refine this, and with the help of everyone here, with the help of Lucero, with the help of the cabinet, with the help of the community, that's what helps support coherence, I think, without a doubt. And knowing that we all are fallible but human, so that we can go and Beth can tell me I was rambling and that Laura can tell me that I put her to sleep. Like that's important to be able to do that.
It really
Doing that
is.
honestly.
Oh, it's
You didn't even apologize.
That's right. I know you did it.
But I will. That's fine.
I love it. That's awesome. You guys. Wow.
I think also from the DO office, sometimes when the structures have been previously lacking, like this, at least on my time here, you all have been very willing to look at the process again and institute new structure for the next time that certain situations rise, which is great. That's what you want a responsive administration.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to chapter 4 then. And I kind of highlighted thing. I won't go through, all of it, but I mean, this is really just, I love the way this chapter was written. It was really, I found it probably one of the easier ones to read.
I actually thought there were some typos at the beginning.
Oh, you did?
No.
Oh, I didn't notice that. No,
Like the
really?
wording.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
interesting. What?
there's something very weird.
Yeah.
I thought it was me.
What?
I was like, I'm being like,
Okay. The typos or just formatting or what you?
no, it's the wording from.
It was a weird sentence structure. I
I would like you to diagram that sentence on the
Yeah,
spot.
I do
please,
too.
like-
Let's do it.
I have to go back to. In almost every organization, public and private, more attention is being given to onboarding someone new by providing them with a full complement of tools, an explanation of the culture of the organization, and a clear definition of roles and responsibilities. But that's right after saying, or they're trying to make the point that onboarding is not going well or something. But they're basically saying, it was just a little
It's
bit.
rambling. Oh, okay, got it.
That wasn't mine. There's another part of the chapter where I was like, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me.
Okay, well,
That's
fine.
fine.
Standing was mine, pizza.
So going back to the topic rather than the grammar edit. I think this is something that honestly we as a board. And I really look to you, Mike and Beth, because you've been onboarded more than once, but
That's right, indeed.
I do think that there is some nature to the board that is learn as you go. And it's not hopefully it's not the governance norms and it's not what we're trying to do. But I would love, and I think someone could make a lot of money if anyone's out there listening, figuring out a way to better onboard,
Agreed.
school board trustees with the issues the district is facing to ramp it up. So I would love. Yeah.
With the district.
Yeah, right. But if I don't know how you felt, Mike, about how you're onboarding things you wish we had done differently.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I'm still getting acquainted with everything. But I think I'm now like part of some other boards or whatever, and I definitely value the cohesion and organization of this because it's in stark contrast to some other things now that I've experienced. So, and I think also right after, I guess shortly after swearing in, going to the conference is good just in terms of non-governance onboarding, but learning who each of you are and being comfortable and not feeling left out. So I honestly, I was thinking about this when reading. I don't exactly know what I would change specifically, like other than thinking that for a job that you just kind of have to go through, it was pretty good. So.
But yeah, Beth, the multiple onboarding, like how do we do compared to past boards you've been on?
Well, one of the things that I noted here after reading this, I thought this was a pretty good chapter in terms of the direction it gave the first 100 days and understand that time is your best friend. I thought that was a good realistic comment. But what I was surprised at is that this whole chapter says nothing about creating a policy to guide your onboarding, which is what we did back in the day. And then boards after me didn't follow it. But it was board policy, and the whole reason we put it together was because of that, because it was so stressed to me when I was first on that board. Well, I told you this before, but when you come on a board and it's immediate tension, then the one good thing about that is you got to pay attention to it. You got to do something or you're not going to be able to work together. So, so that's why we went into it, is because we kind of had to. It wasn't like we just got one board member that was quiet. We got 3 of us, and it was, a recall had been threatened, but then taken back. And then these 3 people came in, me, one of them. We didn't know each other, but we were all 3 strong viewpoints, and opposite viewpoints. And then we have a superintendent that was his own intense personality. Half of the teachers hated him, and it was a lot. So we in the fire, and we had to forge something, so that's where that came from. And And it worked, and I guess that's why after I left the board, people were, oh, well, we're getting along so well, well, and even though when I would go to the board meetings and say, hey, don't forget, you need to have a board self-evaluation, they were just kind of poo-poo. We're fine, we're fine, and so it just could never convince them that, how it is meaningful, even when you feel like you are getting along, but there's always something that you need to be in touch with, or you can do better, like Mike was saying, what do we need to do better? But I liked what, oh, and then just for me coming on, I thought, we did a good job. I like that, Mike and I could, as new board members, could meet with Linda and Josh and get that some separate tutelage. That was good, and then doing this is, so, I, like I said, I liked the, tips that they gave in here. I thought they were well thought out.
I think just if I go to, and thank you both, Mike and Beth, that was a great question earlier to have them. No, I love it. That's good. It's kind of, they've got it most fresh in their minds, and how did we do, right? If we're wanting to, but yeah, that's kind of how I, sort of drafted the guiding questions, and maybe we don't have to go through all of them, but our, strengthening the onboarding experience. I think both of you have kind of answered that. Is there anything else, the rest of you feel, that we maybe want to add to that for the future?
I mean, I'll say one thing that I think is a little unseen on the how can veteran trustees, which I am not one, even though I feel like one after being in the trenches for a few years, is being available is one of the biggest things. And again, there's these Brown Act issues, so it's not discussing board policy or board decisions, but it's being available to say, hey, this is just for whatever concerns there might be. I mean, obviously the superintendent is there as well, but sometimes there's just board specific things where it's like, I don't know what to do about this, or why did you give that evil look to the other person in the room? Stuff like that can help. That gets a little Brown Acty, sorry, but it can help just being, hopefully again, feeling that availability can help the mentorship.
Actually, site visits were offered.
Yeah.
Which I did some of, but I think I missed some. I think Beth did more than me. But on the ones that I did, it's sort of like a open house thing, like understandably kind of like showing the best version. But it would be nice to kind of have like a one-on-one with you and the principals sometimes, or like maybe that first time to get to know them a little bit better and like what their situation at school is, because
each site kind of has its own.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it could be questions like, what are you most proud of, and what's the most difficult thing you're facing right now, or some of those things that.
Well, and the other thing I think too, for Mike, I felt like, I didn't have to ask a lot of questions because not only because of prior experience, but also because I'd been coming to board meetings for 5 years, so I was kind of up to date with a lot of things, but Mike, is new. And so, he was directed to ask questions ahead of time, and then that's all appropriate. But I also, sometimes I felt like, no, just let them ask in the board meeting sometimes, because it's good for all of us to kind of hear an answer sometimes to a new person's question about, even if we think we know the answer. And I just felt like it's more inclusive of him if I didn't want you to feel like, oh, I can't ask this question because whoops, I should have asked ahead of time or whatever. That's the only thing I really felt like. Sometimes I wanted like, oh, I hope he can ask this question without a feeling like he's taken up too much time.
Oh, I don't think I didn't ask questions because I felt like I should have asked them before. Maybe because of time sometimes, but that's also understandable.
Good about asking questions in the little board
Yeah.
update.
I mean-
Yeah, or, ahead of time,
Yeah.
which I really appreciated because I could tell they were your questions.
But I thought they were
Oh, these are very good questions,
That's
yeah.
funny.
So, but it's good to know if you didn't feel
Well, yeah, that is important.
squashed.
And I hope none of you feel that way. I mean, look, I think the purpose of that is we want to know as much as we can. I don't want it being, I've got this question, I'm going to save it, to the dice and do it as a gotcha. I think that's the no surprises piece we want. I think when we're having an in-depth conversation, it's very legitimate and you all do it, right? I mean, Laura's question will spark an interest in me and I'll think, oh my gosh, that just makes me think of something right now. I hadn't thought of this before. That's part of the, conversation that happens, right?
Agreed.
So I think they can be seen, they can live separately, right?
The one way I'll push back, because I'm allowed to do that, is that there's questions that are off. They're either off. 'Cause the thing about it is our board meetings are conducting board business. So one thing that I would say that I wish I had done a better job reining in, not just Mike or Beth and I mean, for all of us along the way since I've been in this role for 11 months, but who's counting, is that when there's questions being asked that again is either more personal or is not board business, those are the questions I would say really need to be. And it's not an issue of transparency, it's just it's an issue of efficiency. And so that's one thing I remember we got into a argument when I first got on the board about the term of effectiveness and efficiency, because efficiency may not be a goal. But I would argue again, this is where if we're efficient, we can handle more of the board business that we need to handle. If we're not efficient and we're focused on, things that are what color the new school is going to be painted, maybe that's a board. I don't know, but like that it just brings back to that what our core governance values are. And so that's where I think I won't say questions should be quashed, but I would say questions should be redirected to non-board meeting times as long as they're not.
Yes. But however, as long as, okay, let's say I'm asking a question and you're thinking, I don't want her to take any more time. So you can say something about how can we handle this question in a different venue maybe, or I would want to be somehow considered and not just about a timeliness. I bristle at too much timeliness because we don't really have that much time. You're right. But part of the reason we don't have that much time is we have fewer board meetings, so we don't have that kind of, this is great because here we are, we have this luxury of discussing things. And so I miss that a little bit in a board meeting. I understand. And I can respect the need, of course, to monitor and to keep people on task. I would just want to be, I guess, given an opportunity to maybe ask it at a different time, put it on a future agenda, maybe. Anything. I'm just saying that how it's handled is important too.
I agree. And I've tried hard, not always, but I try hard to talk with after the meeting. So like if I think you're asking a lot of completely unintelligible off point questions, I will do my best to reach out to you one-on-one and say, hey, I totally think these are good questions for you to have, but we weren't able to get to the 15 items.
Time or in a different.
Yeah, in a different venue. And again, that's just,
I can handle that.
and as a board member, the thing is, board members, we have the right to ask whatever question we want within reason. But again, I think that shared purpose is what gives us the coherence, right? If we are, if I'm really focused on what, I keep coming up with great examples today, but like what color the new uniforms are going to be at the middle school. Like I could make sure that that gets its due time, at a meeting, but is that really, again, come back to our goal of students first, and making sure so that's where just that balance, and it's not a right or wrong. It's like, it's a river that flows and you're just trying to always hopefully steer it towards the.
Yeah, and I think part of what you're bringing up is like, what's helpful is to get to the reason that that person feels it's so important right now to bring this up. So if it's like the color of the uniforms, okay, I might be missing something why that's coming up for you. And so if we get to that, it's a lot easier to either, to be able to put it at a different time or because you satisfied my feeling of like, okay, that this is important to me. Yeah.
Anything else we want to talk about on chapter 4? One, practices that can help reinforce a governance mindset from day one. On the slide before, I'd kind of added a quote that was on one of the pages, and this was just really, there were two, but every time a trustee joins the board, it becomes a new board, right? And then the governance culture of a board is always subject to flux, and trustees with a governance mindset understand the importance of making a new trustee a valued member of the team. I think it's that whole sense of, one of you mentioned, and maybe it was you, Beth, but you can have one new trustee come on and have a whole different idea of what they've joined the board for this reason, right? So I think the importance of all of us maintaining and bringing, making them aware of what that mindset is and what our practice and protocols are as soon as possible is important. But what do you all think about that, though? What practices do we have in place that reinforce that governance mindset, would you, in your opinion?
Well, the mindset of what, that we're just, in tune with each other, or?
Yeah, I mean, do you feel we have that? And if so, how do we practice that?
Starting with CSBA from day one, I think is that for me, that was huge. Because it's not just us getting to know each other, but also learning from other boards, which is such a valuable lesson of like, wow, they dealt with this and this is how they did it. That kind of thing. And then what we're doing tonight. Those are the two like active things. The other is, you had us read from our governance norms and just being reminded of that and, working on those regularly too, whenever someone comes on is an important part of that.
Should, frame our norms.
Yeah.
Put them up in
The norms.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I'd love to do that. Well, are you ready to move on to the next one? Okay. All right, the next one is our governance tool. Our self-evaluation reflection, which is our, tool as well. So we want to take a little break before we go on to that, or we're going to just head straight into it. Let's do it. Okay, so I've got a hard copy. I'll distribute that. Yeah. Okay, so this came from, you're losing steam. 4:30. Okay. I think, maybe we just,
hours until
I was thinking 8:30, for an ending time for us, and it's how about that if we know 20 minutes left, and this could be really one of our closing items, right? And let's make it that,
I
right?
think that's a good, do we have do we want to maybe share at least the 3 items that people shared with you?
Yeah.
So for us to think about, and then maybe we can weigh the two. I think this is
Well,
important, but
And this was really just the additional topics to discuss, right?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it'll be good for us to have that in mind. No one has shared any feedback on the actual tool itself. But,
No.
we wanted to talk a little bit more, it had come forward, just, and this is part of our practices, right? The MOU that we brought forward for early, retirement incentives, there was a request to maybe have an opportunity in closed session for items like that to discuss in advance. And I think in that particular case, that made sense to me just because, having an open discussion about that could then look like, or, we're not in support of, but just things, of that nature. So it's not it's not a surprise. And that could be under negotiating topics. Walk-on items has been a topic, recently just on the protocols and, when is it necessary and acceptable, right, for a walk-on item to be brought on? And you've raised that, the last two meetings, Laura. So I think that's an important topic for us. I've actually gone back to our sites and addressed that with, not only our principals, but at our clerical meeting this past week of just, we don't want that to become like a norm, right? That it's acceptable. If you miss the deadline, it's okay. You can do it as a walk-on. No, and I kind of went through the requirements of what, that would qualify. We even talked about maybe rewording it as something, right? Not walk-on maybe implies that it's okay, right? So, just some things there. Employee recognition has been a topic that's come up from, a couple of you on just how, we're, we've obviously got our new formal recognition system in place that, will be kicking off in January this year, which is new for us this year, right? But, I think it's come up just at board, meetings. Is there an opportunity for us to, call out, attention to, just great things that we're seeing and that our staff are doing. And then there was a request for cultural proficiency training. We're doing this work with Anne and Caroline right now. Would there be an opportunity for a future governance session for maybe them, or, Larry could also lead an activity that, he's been leading with our cultural proficiency team as well. So those are the 4 topics that came up.
one other I would just add to that, I think we mentioned quickly is the idea of the forward looking, like what is something the board would like to accomplish in the
That is, we did.
good year.
Right,
Yeah, in
as
the
we're
next year. So
looking through
that might be
this,
one
right.
I like the idea of maybe having some of these folks sigh on the next governance. But I don't think we should, if it's okay with folks, I don't think we should discuss these now, but
Mhm.
push them forward and do the review. Sound good to folks? Because we will run out of time otherwise.
Okay. Well, let's go again.
Sorry.
Have a peek at our self-evaluation form. So remember, this will be something that Lou is going to guide us with. So bad news, we had it scheduled for December. What is that date? It's the 18th, I think, that Thursday. It's our special meeting. And Lou was, kind of ready for it and had agreed to it. And then good news for him, because his daughter's going to be in town and she's arriving on the 16th. And he's asked if we could reschedule for, another month. So, we're looking at January, February, but I want to just make all of you aware that that's, kind of what we're looking. I think the good news on it is that it gives us a bit more time, to kind of, reflect on it and give him feedback before he comes, to that session to actually, guide us through the process, right? So I think what he's looking for now is for us to just, take time to review the questions, and if there's any changes we want to make on this tool, we agree to, that I can then get that feedback back to him. But this is the tool he's used. It came directly from Lozano Smith that, he has actually facilitated with several boards very successfully for them to, complete the process. Mike, you were going to ask something.
And just the reminder of the protocol is we will be filling these out on our own before and then bringing them. So it is something, it might be a worthwhile exercise for us all to go through and even just fill these out now, because we could try. That would give us the ability to say this question doesn't make sense or this does. Not here. I'm saying like as a homework assignment.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Like a homework assignment for us
Sure.
to do this, just to go over it, and might even be worth it. Like, I don't know if it makes sense to have a check-in before we do the official evaluation, but could be something we want to do.
Well, we do still have that special meeting on December, that's on our calendar. So we could even, okay.
I'll be gone, but if other folks will be around, I'm happy.
Well, and look,
I'll let you guys solve all of my problems. Evaluate me. DM, have the 18th PM. outgoing board president evaluation day to hold my absenteeism. Yeah.
I'm gonna take a quick peek at the calendar just to see what our dates are in January and February, and we can, and I guess that's the question now. So our January special board meeting is scheduled for the 22nd of January. So I could try for that date for Lou, or would we prefer the February date? Sooner or?
Sooner the better.
Okay, so I'm gonna aim with him for the 22nd. Well,
Let's hold it for
what do we
now.
want to do?
I mean, I would still hold it for now in case there's topics that come up because if there still will be a quorum.
Right, well, I'm gonna just add Lou to this one for now, just so he knows that's the date, if you don't mind. I'm gonna send him a quick invite, just when I'm thinking of it. Okay,
But we don't know if he's available though.
well, right,
gonna
that's
ask
what I'm
him.
gonna, exactly right. He said January, February, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so hopefully that night works for him. We will see. Yep.
The only thing I had was,
Yeah.
just adding an additional question at the very end of it. Which I phrase like, is there any other issue you feel needs to be addressed that has not been in this evaluation? A little awkward sense in this thing, but.
Numbering has to be looked at.
Really?
Numbering as in, do you mean the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
No, no,
or the?
like-
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
One, no number one. two,
No, that
and
is weird, right?
then it goes
Yeah.
10, nothing, 8, 9,
Yeah.
10.
That's an
Yeah,
easy
so
fix for
maybe just
AI.
the format thing. Yeah, okay.
It's on order.
22, 24, 26.
What,
Seems like a copy paste
Yeah.
issue.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right.
It is.
Mhm, yeah.
What do folks think about adding a question that I was commenting that would cross something off that is about what are the goals for the next year? Like, would that make a good sense for a board? I mean, it seems like that's an evaluation-y type question. Or would we rather do that separate?
Evaluating or.
Yeah, if it doesn't feel good, that's fine.
I kind of think our goals are in line with the LCAP and the superintendent's goals. And we would have separate goals for the board. Might need to noodle that.
Noodling allowed, I will allow it.
That does raise, that reminds me, I mean, we have our board goals, right? That, we agreed on last year. And so probably would also be just, I can reshare them with all of you. And then it's a nice opportunity as well to kind of look at, refine, but, when you're filling this out, have those in front of you as well, right, to kind of consider. But out of this may come that, we're looking at the goals and that could be a next step in the next project, right, that we want to work on.
Yeah, because there's a section where you are evaluating yourself on your goals or your vision and planning. So,
Yep, you're right. Yeah.
so then based on anything we need to do from there would bump over to.
Right.
This is another tangent, but I think for the district and not just you individually or a school, but like to have a brag sheet of like each year would be kind of good. Because then it just is nice to see all yeah.
Year-end summary.
I know I was, really pro failure before.
Both sides, the brag sheet and the fail.
No, because so much of what, so much of what we do, it gets lost.
I love it. Great idea. With that, I think it's a good time for us to go back and gavel out.
Good for you guys. You're all amazing. Thank
My
you.
packet. Was it my
Oh, yes, energy, please. I'm gonna
Oh,
collect those.
okay.
Thank you.
Wake up in 3 hours.
No,
Yeah,
4:30, yes, we have it.
Oh.
4:30.
Thank you, everyone. Man, yeah,
You're back.
that's hard.
Oh, yeah, I have mine.
The bus. Harriet. Oh, man. All right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Bye, Laura. Good night. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
we're here.
We're here.
We don't have to vote on anything, so, yeah.
Hold all of a sudden.
I know.
Gaveling us out at 8:21 for our board governance section. We will see you in December. Happy Thanksgiving to all.